Okay, there we go. All righty, guys. Good evening. Welcome to class number 3. Again, we're recording this for your amusement as well as mine. And your opportunity to go back tonight will be the hardest of all the classes, but it'll be the most rewarding. Once we get through tonight and you guys go through that, you will have learned quite a bit, and everything is downhill after this class. Just a quick note, we've got Nikki's running around. We still have David going to be assisting us this evening, and I've got Aaron, my other dive master, going to be assisting us as well. On an opportunity note for you guys, we do have class for nitrox on Friday. If you haven't typed your email address into my computer, we'll do that on break. I think Rosie, you're the last one that hasn't typed it in, and we'll be doing that live via Memorex Zoom on Friday night from 6:30 to midnight, or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Whenever we get done. I'm just kidding. About 9 o'clock. It's about a 2-hour class. Easy enough. You will be picking up your gear on Friday from the dive shop. More than likely, I'll see what we can do, but more than likely, you'll just keep your dive gear from Thursday night all set up, ready to go. You'll just need to grab 2 tanks before we leave as well. Another opportunity for you, we do have a class called Stress and Rescue. Stress and Rescue is amazing and fun class. Both David and Aaron have been through my Stress and Rescue class. It is a great class, and what it teaches you is not how to be a rescue diver in terms of jumping out of helicopters and doing high-speed, low-drag, stuff like that, but what it will teach you to do is how to self-rescue, as well as assist in rescue of others, and be more aware of those signs and symptoms. It's 4 classrooms, 4 pools, and 1 open water. It's a really fun class to do, and if you want to get through and understand what stresses you in the water and how to get past it, this is the class for you. If you're interested in getting to that point of CPR, first aid, and recognizing issues with diving in others as well as yourself, this is the class for you. So it's one of those classes we strongly recommend that everybody take after nitrox. It will definitely help you quite a bit to be a more confident, stronger diver. It is primarily surface skills. There are some unconscious diver skills, and there's some things and some ideas that we will teach you to give you a better understanding of how diving works as well. So if you're interested in that, I can get you the dates on that. We just set the dates this afternoon. I've got them in my wallet. I haven't even put them online yet. So this is today's joke. I sent this over to my wife. Babe, send nudes. This is what she sent back. So diving is amazing. There's a lot of interesting, cool things to see. This particular little critter is called a nudibranch. They come in about 1,000 different colors and configurations. They're all about the same size. They're about this big. It's basically like a slug that's extremely colorful and very interesting to watch, and very fun. This one's in Hawaii, off the coast of Kona. Kind of spotted them, and it's something that most divers really look forward to spotting and seeing. So there's my bad joke for the day. Send me nudes. There's a nudibranch. Again, if you guys would, if you feel any particular way about this class, please go onto Facebook and to Google and give us a review. If you think I suck, that's fine. All I ask is honesty. If you think I'm great, that's great. Give us a positive review, but give us a review either way of what you felt. It's either our opportunity to say, yay, we did a good job, or we have room to grow, and here's how we can grow. So I want to make sure that we're doing the best job we possibly can. And again, the only thing I ask of anybody is the same thing I ask of myself and my kids, is always be honest. So easy enough. So today we're going to go through the briefing and getting ready for the dive. Who's excited? Diving. You guys excited? Diving. Yay! We should be excited. Yay! Yay! I'm not feeling the love here.
Oh, yay!
There we go. A little bit better. So that as we go through the dive and get ready to do our dive, we always do what's called a pre-dive briefing. Pre-dive briefing is really, really important because it outlines a few key pieces. As we start, and I'm your dive master / instructor / flight attendant pilot on this amazing journey of water. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the objective of today's dive is, what are we going to do? This afternoon, the objective of this afternoon's dive is going to be, we're going to learn air sharing ascents, emergency buoyant ascent, emergency swimming ascents. We're going to go through all the emergency skills. Good news in all those dives, you will all have the chance to do it once with me as you being out of air. you'll have a chance again to do it again with you being the donor of for the out of air. So I will be the one out of air first, or actually you'll be the one out of air first, I'm sorry, and then I will be out of air. So you'll get a chance to do each of the out of air sharing with me in both positions so that you know what it feels like to do it the right way completely. I take a lot of pride in that as well, that you'll all have a chance to do it with me twice. Once as donor, once as receiver. It's not a hard skill. It's all pretty common sense. As you go through the process, it'll all make sense. But that's going to be the objective of today's dive. If we're on a dive boat, today, the objective might be, today we're going to be jumping off this dive boat, doing a giant stride. We're going to be hitting a roof at 60 feet. There's going to be a light current coming from the southeast going to the northwest. So it'll be a light drift dive. We're going to be seeing coral. Please don't touch the coral. Please don't eat the coral. Please don't harass the fish. Just kidding. Remember, as we dive, we take only pictures, leave only bubbles. So those are some of our key pieces. We're going to be doing this along the reef. If you get into 70 feet, you're off the wrong side of the reef. If you go to 50 feet, you're on the other side, wrong side of the reef. Stay on the reef. So that's the objective of today's dive. When we get to the end of the dive, we're all going to stop. We're going to do our safety dive up to 15 feet. We're going to pop the surface, and the boat will come by and pick us up. That's the view. So those are some samples of the objective of the dive. What are we going to be doing, right? You don't ever jump in the car for your vacation and say, okay, we're going on vacation. We're going to go in this direction for, I've got 5 days of PTO. So we're going to go in this direction for 5 days of PTO. And sometime around there, half, we're going to turn around and come back. You don't do that, right? Same thing with diving. We want to know exactly what we're doing. Part 2 of that is the conditions of the dive. These are reasonably important. And I can promise you, I've been on a few boats. I showed you the video in week 1 where I got on a boat and the seas were 5 to 6 feet. Conditions of the dive are reasonably important. Jumping off a dive boat that's pitching 5-6 feet is a big deal. In fact, that particular boat was the only boat going out that day, and it only took advanced divers that they knew. If they didn't know them and they came up and said, I'm an advanced diver, say, whoop, sorry, buddy, we don't know you, kick sand. So that's not uncommon, right? And luckily, we knew the dive boat owner, we know the dive boat, and they knew us well enough to know that, yeah, the Hadfields are good to go, right? So, but that's not a boat you probably want to jump on, right? As a new diver, first dive in the water, pitching 5 to 6 feet, having to figure out how to jump off that, doesn't sound like fun, does it? I don't know. With me, I had more enthusiasm than experience when I first started diving. So for me, I'd probably, let's do it. But again, remember the 3 keys. Don't dive above your experience, above your training, and above your comfort level. So always dive within those 3. Remember, you are in charge of you. I think everybody got up this morning and put on your big boy pants or big boy skirts, whatever floats your boat. And if you guys want to wear skirts, that's fantastic. I support you in that. Go, my brother or sister, whatever it is. But we all made adult decisions this morning to do whatever we did, to get in our cars and come here. Same thing with the dive boat. You are all adults. I promise you, at no point I'm going to say, you're going to jump off the boat or else. The boat's sinking? No. Then why the hell do I have to jump off it because you say so? It doesn't work that way. You are in charge of you. If you are not comfortable jumping off that boat, don't jump off the boat. Just that easy. In fact, I was one of my divers last Saturday. I was so proud of him. He's one of my ice diving students. Got in the hole. He's an experienced dry suit diver, experienced diver, and just wasn't feeling it. Got down for about a minute, came back up, says, I got to call this dive. I need to reset. Got out of the hole, went, took his gear off, got in the warm tent, got warm, and then came back out after he was warm and reset and said, okay, I've reset. I'm ready to try this again. He realized very quickly that the water's not going away. 2/3 of the earth covered in water. It's there for you tomorrow. There's always time to dive tomorrow or later on, right? But if you ain't feeling it, reset the dive. Don't be afraid. The next piece of that is anybody can call a dive at any point for any reason, no consequences, and that's important. Why is that? Why do you think you can call a dive anytime for any reason? Whether we're 50 feet down or 5 feet down. Absolutely. So let me give you a scenario. Nikki and I are diving. In fact, you and I are diving. We went to Truck Lagoon. Truck Lagoon is it's like a 22-hour flight from here, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful water. Cost you a bunch of money, probably 10 grand for our trip to go there because we're like that now, right? We're tight. So as we go to Truck Lagoon, we get down. We've been down for 5 minutes on this beautiful wreck that we could have penetrated. That has this amazing staircase that I've been waiting my entire life to dive. You call it at 5 minutes. We hit to the surface, and I'm like, and I throw my little man fit, right? I curse you out. Why $10,000 truck? We go down for dive 2. Will you ever tell me if there's a problem again? Exactly. No consequences. It's important. You have to realize that, or be able to believe that when we come up, for whatever reason that is, that now I may ask, hey, you okay? What's going on? And you can certainly tell me, is everything okay? I just wasn't feeling the dive. I needed to reset. Cool. No problem. Let's hop back in the boat. Let's have a couple of virgin margaritas, and we'll go on it.
So what about when you're paying someone though? Like if
doesn't matter.
What do they do in instances like that? Will they just say, okay, we'll try it another day?
Try it another day. Try it later this afternoon. Try it whenever.
Well, but that's what I mean. Like, what if you're only there for like 5 days? And you're just like, I can't, and you just never do it? Do you get a refund?
Probably not.
Okay.
Most likely, it depends. Each dive shop's different. Each owner is different. You know, it's one of those things that you'll have to deal with that with the individual. But in the end, you come back from your vacation alive, and I feel that that's the most important payment that you possibly get.
Yeah.
So that's what I want you guys to always be able to do, is come back from your vacations happy, safe, and alive. Great memories, great cool pictures, a ton of bubbles left. That's the most important part of this whole process. So conditions to dive are definitely important. We're doing a night dive. You're not certified for night dives? Nope, we're not doing it, right? The dive plan. What are we going to do? What is our plan for this vacation dive, right? What does that look like? So, okay, we're on this particular dive. We're going to jump off this boat. We're going to all congregate as a group, because I don't believe in negative entries. I think it's a very dangerous thing for new divers. So we're going to all group together. Then we're going to descend as a group to this reef, 60 feet. We're going to be down for 50 minutes. What you'll find is worldwide, the majority of dives that you're going to be doing as an initial recreational diver are going to be 50 minutes. Anybody know why 50 minutes is the magic number? Nope. Nope. Because they want to do 2 dives on the morning and they want to do 2 dives in the afternoon, so they have to keep you on schedule. Most dive boats hate people like Nikki and I, because on a 80 cubic foot tank, we can usually stay down for about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. And so we're usually the last ones on the boat. But it typically is just to keep a schedule. That's the truth about it. But they're going to talk about the dive plan. So we're going to be diving for 50 minutes. We're going to come up. We're going to do a 3-minute safety stop at 15 feet. Pop to the surface. We're going to launch our SMB. We're going to flag the boat down as a group. And then we'll get back on the boat. And you'll hear things like on day 2, you'll hear me say this. Okay, I want you guys to go out and do a 20-minute dive. If your little head is not above the surface at 20 minutes, I will come find you and I will drag you out. On the boat, they will say something more like, if I don't see you out of the water at the 60-minute mark, I will call the Coast Guard. We will drag you out of the water. We'll put you on air and life flight you out of here. So jokingly, of course, but if you're not out at a certain point, they feel like there must be an emergency. So that will be part of the dive plan. How long you're going to go down. What direction you're going to go. What's the direction of travel? Is there a current? How long? What's the emergency recall procedure? What happens if something, right? Next thing is going to be communication. How do I communicate with you? Now, the great thing is you guys aren't going to be reading FFM, so you're going to have to learn a little sign language. There's a few sign language pieces to know. First one's going to be, we've already practiced this. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yep, and what are you supposed to do if I do it to you? Give it back to me. It's a question. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. If there's a problem, it's going to be my ears. There's a problem. My tummy. There's a problem. There's a problem. My dive buddy over there he's a problem. Just kidding. Just kidding. But, that means a problem. Come up a little bit. Go down a little bit. Descend. How about this one? Does everybody think surface? For me, it's a little different. That means end of dive. We're done. Dive is ending. We're going up. We're going to go do our safety stop, and we're going to hit up. How about this one? Emergency recall. There's a problem. We all have to get to the boat. Emergency recall. A lot of times you'll hear it as well. And you hear that from the boat. But each boat will be a little different. When I'm trying to get your guys' attention, you'll hear me. That means I'm just trying to get your attention, right? But if you hear it from the boat, generally that's what it means is a recall. But communication. Other cool things. Like they say, hey, what do you think I'm trying to tell you?
Slug?
Lobster.
Yeah, I was
Lobster?
gonna say crab. Yeah.
Crab.
Yeah,
Crab. Uh huh.
Dolphin? Whale?
Nope. Nudibranch.
Oh. Have you ever seen a whale?
Hmm? Not diving, but we've seen them off the side of the boat,
Oh, okay.
and we've heard them. I've got a great video on my Facebook page of we were diving. We were recording the garden eels, and you could hear the whales in the background. And it's cool because the garden eels came up after because we left our GoPro at a spot and we went away. And as they come up, all of a sudden you start hearing the whales, and it's like you're dancing to the whale song. And they got pretty tall. They got about this tall.
So would they, if you go on would they take you close enough to whales, or is that something that like?
It's not very common for you to get close enough to whales.
Okay.
It's extremely uncommon. We've seen them off the boat breaching and waving and doing whatever they do and playing and doing their thing. But in terms of diving, it's a very rare thing to get to dive with a whale.
Okay.
And they're also a pretty good size animal.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got nudibranch. How about this one?
Turtle.
Turtle, absolutely. So as you can see really quickly, one of Nikki's favorites,
Drumfish.
drumfish, absolutely.
Seahorse. Yeah.
Seahorse, yep. Trumpet fish, trumpet or cornet fish. That's one of my favorites. Absolutely. So there's whale,
Fish?
whale.
Oh, whale.
Mhm. So there's different signs and signals for almost everything out there. There's a ton of them out there, right?
Do you review those type of things with your team? Because obviously, some people are going to have different
I do.
signals.
Absolutely. For the most part, those signals are pretty common. The biggest one I go through is how do we count air? How much air do you have? In my section, what I do is usually have a light on my left hand. So if it's dark, I do it down here. But front of the hand for me is 1 through 5. Back of the hand is 6 through 9 for air. So what's your gauge? I have 2,700, 1,900. So that's how I do it. Now, there's other ways to do that. You can certainly do 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, things like that, or 5, 6, or you could do 1,500. There's several different ways to do it. How I do it is technical style, which is 1 through 5, front of the hand. Back of the hand is 6 through 9. But we talk about that. The nice thing is as you go along and you dive with the same person over and over again, you'll start developing a rhythm and you'll start understanding their hand and arm signals. Nick? Are you doing okay? Are you having a good time? Is everything okay? That's our signal. We do that a lot. So that's something we've come up with. But we've also come up with enough hand and arm signals that we can communicate a fair amount. In fact, I remember once we were in Roatan and we stopped, we were doing a wall dive, and we'd stopped and we're always the ones at the back. We go very slowly because, as I talked about in day one, we focus on this square foot and then this square foot. We're not fast divers, and I'm okay with that. We're usually first one's off the boat, last one's back on the boat. And we typically, the dive guides and the dive masters, they're all way the heck ahead of us, and I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable enough in my own diving to do our own thing and find the boat again. Never have not found the boat, obviously. But we'd stopped and we'd found this huge, wonderful crab. I measured him with my GoPro. What was it, 5 GoPros? His claw was 5 GoPros long. So it was a big crab, and we were just enjoying this. And they'd gone down and around the curve, and it's not a site we'd been to before. And so there was a point where we had no idea where they were. We couldn't see their bubbles. They were gone. And so what we did is we came up over the wall, and we overlanded it to where I was pretty sure they were at. And I just told Nikki, and I was able to communicate. She understood. Don't tell the rest of the group that we got lost. We'll catch them when we can. And so we overlanded. And we overlanded for what, about 10, 15 minutes?
What's overlanded?
Well, there was a cliff that went around, and so we went over the cliff and over top of the cliffs, over a landed area, over the reef, and then we came back on the other side of the wall and we caught up with them. But it took us about 15 minutes, and there's that uncertainty portion. But we've been able to communicate well enough.
I would say though that with dive guides come to you. They should tell you typical fish that they're going to see. Right? Some of the
Yeah, most of the dive guides are familiar with their location well, but they'll know the different kinds of fish, and everywhere is a little unique as well. So there's also one of my other favorites is triggerfish. I really like triggerfish. The Hawaii, in fact, the state fish of Hawaii is the hunu hunu kama kama hana hana puku puku, something like that. It's about that long. It's pretty funny. So anyway, dive plan and communication is definitely key, but you'll go through that, and I encourage you to, especially if you've been hooked up with an InstaBuddy, go through that. What's that look like? What are we going to talk about? And how does that work? Buddy checks. Buddy checks are pretty straightforward. Here's how I do buddy checks. Go ahead and stand up for a minute. I have my buddy stand up. He's got his gear on. I do the LDS primary of head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Head, he's got his mask. Shoulders, he's got his BC. It's clipped. He's got his inflator. I check his inflator. Fantastic. He's got his air primary coming over. He's got his safety second coming over. Fantastic. They work. He's belted down. Working my way down. He's got fins. He's got a wetsuit. Everything's clipped up. Looks good to go. Turn around for me. I do the same thing. Air is on. Head. Working my way down. He's got his beanie on. Everything looks good. I don't hear any air. Tank seems to be well affixed. We talked about well affixed tanks. Good to go. Good to go. Everything goes look. So I just start head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and work my way. And then I have him do the exact same thing. Now here's where it gets interesting: is as we jump in, you want to get down to about 5 to 10 feet, and you want to do the same thing. And what we do is we call it a bubble check. So I stop, spin around, and what I do is I have him look for bubbles, and then he gives me the okay. And then I do the same thing. You get to do your, if you really want to feel special, do the little pirouette with it, have fun with it, right? So we make sure we do that buddy check, but buddy checks need to be done on the surface before you get in the water, because nothing's more embarrassing than jumping off a boat without fins or jumping off the boat and having your tank fall off, right? A little bit of preparation goes a long way. This is a preparation sport. Next thing after we do a buddy check, we're going to do a quick familiarization. My gear is going to be different than your gear, okay? Your gear is going to be different than her gear, okay? As we look at it, for example, I got it. This is the BC I'm diving tonight. It's just my teaching BC, but what you'll first discover is it's a single web. Everything's connected. My weight pockets are a little different than yours. If I pull this whole thing, all the weight just falls out the bottom. There is not a weight pocket to take out, okay? Little things. And they're not right where you think they are. Yours are going to be like this. Mine are behind me. Nikki's has the same idea, but she has actual weight pockets. You can see I keep a cutter right up here. And then I have a chest strap. So there's some definitely differences between mine and yours. You grab that SS1 over there. Now you guys all have standard inflators, but sometimes people have these. Instead of having a safety second, they have an all-in-one. This is called an SS. This particular one's an SS1. The button for inflate, button for deflate, and a button for purge. You can also breathe on it. It's a regulator. It's a safety second. It's an all-in-one. And what it does is it reduces your need for having one extra hose over your top. So you just take one whole hose away, and you get to use this instead. I dove these for years. There's nothing wrong with them in recreational diving. I do not currently dive one, but then again, I dive technical. So when it's me and my wife diving, we dive a whole different thing. We dive something called side mount. Now, as we look at this, you might notice, what is it missing? Yeah, there's no place for straps on the back. It's called side mount diving. So my tanks go on the sides.
Why did they create that kind of pack?
It was originally for cave diving because it's a lot more modular in system. You can disconnect.
So you can slide more?
You can slide things through. Nothing's wider than your shoulders. Where it really comes as awesome is it's lighter. For example, this weekend I was diving twin sets on my back. So I drove 2 tanks on my back. It was a pain in the butt to get out. With this, I take the tanks down to the water. I get in the water and then I hand them in and I just clip them on. So it's a lot less weight. It's also easier to balance. And the difference between side mount diving and traditional diving, this is traditional diving, and what you have to do, you're balancing something on your back, right? And you're constantly balancing. Side mount diving, this is how you balance. It's like laying on a coffee table to dive. As Aaron will tell you, hey Aaron, how long did it take you to get from, we did our advanced balance and buoyancy class with you in back mount. We didn't quite get it right in that first night, did we? We got close. And after what, about an hour? How long did it take you to get balanced in side mount? Yeah. So gives you a quick, and Aaron's extremely experienced, 10,000 hours, 3,000 dives. We were getting him perfectly balanced in back mount. In about an hour, we got pretty close. His first night in side mount, after 5 minutes, he was perfectly balanced. So. Mhm. Yep. It's like a pontoon boat. You just, it's a lot more balanced. So being aware of what your partner's diving or what your Insta buddy is diving is definitely going to be your. So familiarize. Where's their weights? Most accidents can be avoided by knowing how to ditch your weights and fill your place C. As you might notice on this, on my inflator, it's low and I clip it over here. So it's in the middle of my chest, coming from below. On that one, it comes over my shoulder, right? So they're in different places. Be aware. It's going to be important to know where your buddy's partners. And then if you have somebody with the SS1, they all of a sudden have 3 buttons. Which one do I push to inflate it? So be familiar. What are they carrying? What does it look like? Entry and exit procedures are huge. How are we getting in the water? The answer in the book is the easiest and safest. Simple enough? So tonight we're going to do some giant stride entries, and we're going to practice that a little bit, okay? But I have been on a boat with a guy that claimed to be a soon-to-be tech instructor, but you'll hear that a lot. We were all standing on the boat. There was 3 of us that were diving the boat that day, and the captain was setting us up. We were on the swim deck of the boat, and he says, "Wait a minute, I can't do a giant stride entry. I have to do a back roll entry." We're like, "Okay, if that makes you happy and you want to do a back roll entry, you should do a back roll entry, but easiest and safest." But how we get in the water? How we get out of the water? My procedure for getting out of the water is I usually have a clip somewhere I get to. I get to the ladder, I clip my fin, I get it off, and I clip it up. I get my other fin, and I put that on the clip. I go over the ladder, and then I climb out. The dive masters drives them nuts because they're used to having somebody hand them the fins and get up. I'm a big boy. I can get out without your help. Thank you for the offer. But generally what you're going to do is you're going to swim up, grab the ladder, you're going to take a fin off, hand it. "Will you take this, please?" "Yes, thank you." "Will you take this, please?" "Yes, thank you." And then go over and climb out the ladder. I can tell you want to time that with the up and downs as well. Entry and exit, how do we get in? How do we get out? Lost buddy procedure. Who read that in the book? You should all be done with your homework at this point. What happens if you lose your buddy?
You look for him in a 360 degree as well as up and down for no more than 60 seconds, and then you make it.
The up and down is huge. Here's my favorite thing to do to you guys when we're at open water and we're at Ryrie is 99% of the time, I'll know exactly where you guys are at. Both of you, all of you. I've got a pretty good spatial awareness and I know. But what ends up happening is I'll have one diver here and I'll have one diver 5 or 7, 8 feet above. And I like to go to you. And I see it every single time. And it's like, look up. It's amazing. It's like a magic trick. Every time it's like a little magic trick. They're right there. Oh, there they are. Oh, thought I lost my buddy. No, there's, so up and down, I can't tell you. Because all of a sudden, I mean, on land, I mean, we look left and right, right? But now all of a sudden we're in a 3D spatial environment. Be sure to look up and down and left and right. 60 seconds. Then go ahead and head up. Magic question for you. You are lost. 60 seconds. Do you do a safety stop? You come to the surface, you've lost your buddy.
Yes?
Yes. Do a safety stop. All right. Emergency procedures. What does that look like? What are the process? And when you get on a dive boat, they're going to tell you, all right, Channel 16 is our boat, International Coast Guard. Channel 72 is our particular boats. If you get lost and end up on the wrong boat, please don't call Channel 16 because that's the Coast Guard. It's embarrassing. Please call Channel 72. The name of our boat is a little deeper, narcosis, anything like that. They'll tell you about that. What's the emergency procedures? Like send divers down like this. That means we're ending the dive. There's an emergency recall. You hear that banging from the boat? But they'll go through that. What are the emergency procedures? Once you get back on the boat, if there is an emergency, where's the oxygen? Is there an AED? Where's the first aid? What happens if? They're going to talk about that. Now, good news is when we go to the dive site on Saturday, in the back of my truck, I have a little first aid kit. It's about this big, by about this big, by this big. It has the cool little medical symbol on it. It's blue. I have 2 air tanks in there, oxygen tank, pure oxygen tanks in there. The majority of dive accidents are going to take pure oxygen. I've got enough for 2 divers for an hour each, or 1 diver for 2 hours. That's enough time to get you to a procedure. If there's an emergency, we're going to talk about exactly what that looks like. Now, just be aware that as you go in the water and feeling, that's how you should come out feeling out of the water. If you suddenly come out with joint pains, vertigo, nausea, dizziness, anything like that, please let me know. That's a sign of something. This is the most self-aware sport you can possibly do, by far. How you feel is important. Your cognitive ability during your dive is important. Everything that happens is different than normal is your body trying to tell you something. So be aware of that. The first time, not the first time, but the last time I should say more accurately, that I got hypothermia, I was down for a dive in 33-degree water, been down for 30 minutes, and I got to the point I lost the feeling of being cold, but I realized that I couldn't do simple things. I was at 49 feet, 50 feet, and I couldn't do the math of how long it was going to take me to get to my safety stop, plus safety stop to get to the surface. Which should have been pretty simple. It should have been 3 minutes to safety stop, 3 minutes to safety stop, minute up, 7 minutes to the surface. That's what it should have been. I couldn't do that. So cognitive ability is a big deal, and it definitely goes away. I had pretty deep hypothermia at the time. So it happens. You get out of the water with a headache. It's your body trying to tell you something. So talk to me about that. Let me know what's going on, right? And we'll make a determination what's going on. Emergency procedures. And then finally, go, no-go decisions. This is a big deal. You guys and I are all in the same boat together. All of us in this room, we're on this boat. I'm the dive master at Pop Up. Congratulations. Today we're doing the Lady Luck off the coast of Fort Lauderdale. Fantastic blue water dive. You're going to love it. We're going to be going down a line. It's a fantastic dive. Just be aware, it is 137 feet to the sand, 128 feet to the deck. I'm planning on all of us having about 45 minutes of deck time on the boat. Then you're going to come up and do your deco procedures on the line per your chart and gas blend. A little bit overwhelming. Should you be on that boat? No. Hell no. That's when you raise your hand and say, I'm on the wrong boat. Do the dives, again, within your ability, within your training, and within your comfort level. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I've always had the problem that my comfort level is everything. I was born without the fear flex. So everything is in my comfort level. So I've had to always stay back and do within my training and my ability. So I've always had more enthusiasm than skill. So be aware of that. If you're that person like I am, jumping out of planes, no big deal. Jumping off a big boat and hitting a 150-foot dive, no big deal, even the first time. Jumping into the river and having no viz for 70 feet going down to the point I got to 75 feet, no big deal. I just wasn't that person, right, that got scared. So stay within your, and what you'll find, and even Sunday when Nikki and I were driving the river, it was an unfamiliar location. I was going to be doing it as a solo dive. I wasn't sure of the current visibility or the condition of the bottom. So what we did, we ran a downline. I hooked up to a downline and I had Nikki run a rope. So I know for me that I had no problem jumping in the water and going down and exploring it, but was that safe? Certainly qualified to do it. Certainly have the ability, the equipment to do it, but I didn't have the knowledge of the site. So we took a little bit of time and stepped back. So even with me, I'll be the first to admit that I realize that, and I don't push the limit or the envelope. So we take some safety precautions. By the way, amazing dive on yesterday. Got to 81 feet was my deepest, and was in a nice little school of 6 to 7 sturgeon, smallest of which was 3 feet, largest 2 were 6.5 feet. So, and they let me get right here with my GoPro. I've got a video, I'll share it in a little while.
Then why didn't she go with you?
It was an unfamiliar situation, and I didn't want to take us both down into an completely unfamiliar situation. So I felt it was better to run a rope and run a line, because if something had happened in an emergency, she could have pulled me back. So I had safety procedure for the surface. I didn't know what the current was going to be or how that was going to be, and I didn't want to take the chance of getting separated.
Sure.
So I wanted somebody at the surface in control.
How was the current?
Very low. Just the hard part was just the descent. There's just no visibility for 60 feet. It takes about 3 minutes to descend through that to kind of find your way. So definitely, it can be unnerving for some. I had a student do a dive like that we were doing a buoy line, and it was 85 feet where we're going. He got down to about 35 feet where he couldn't see the surface, couldn't see the bottom, and could only see about that much visibility, and had a panic attack. So grabbed him, took control, got him calmed down, and then did a gentle ascent.
Oh, he wouldn't go any further.
He wouldn't go any further. He was having a full-on panic attack. I could see it in his eyes. So calmed him down, got him to the surface, got him breathing again, got him back to shore. No big deal. We calmed him down, spent 15, 20 minutes just talking about it, and then decided to do it a different way. So we did it as a shore dive, and we got to depth via the shore where he could see something and had a visual reference point the entire time. What happens? But no-go decision. I'm not feeling good. I made the mistake of going to Filiberto's this morning and having the biggest, greasiest baby leg burrito ever. By the way, don't do that. I've done it. I should say I know somebody that looks much like me that did that. It's not a pretty picture, right? Don't do that. And by the way, my favorite animals are eels. I love eels. I think they are just the neatest thing. And I always think they look like they just told a dad joke and they're waiting for you to get the punchline. I swear, I love eels. There's so many different kinds of them as well. I love just getting it really nice and close. And I'll be admitted, I got right on top of about a 7-foot eel one time, and I bopped him in the nose with my GoPro because he kept coming out just like, as I bopped him, he's like, I told him who's boss. Don't do that.
They won't harm you though, will they?
They have teeth, and they absolutely can bite you. We were on a dive in Hawaii last month, or month before last, and the dive guide put his hand in front of a dragon eel, and it bit him. He got 7 stitches, or 5 stitches. Sorry.
Why was he doing that?
Inexperienced dive guide. He claims he put one finger down to gain balance to look at something else and didn't notice that there was an eel there. But I'm like, a little bit of spatial awareness goes a long way. So it happens. Doesn't happen to me, but it definitely happens. All right. Here comes the fun part. Dive tables. Who got to this and remembers this in your study material? Okay. Need to make sure all homework is done before Thursday, please, because the final test is on Thursday. This is the hardest part of the test that we go through. So these are the dive tables. Interesting story. These were developed by the Navy in the 50s. Okay, and the Navy, in their bright and infinite wisdom, who have never been accused of being all that bright. I'm a former Marine, so I can talk all the trash on the Navy as well. Because Marines aren't much smarter because we're called crayon eaters. But anyway, I digress. The Navy got together and they said, we need, with the Scripps Institute and Bowman, and they said, we need to figure out a dive safety table for our divers so they don't get hurt. And they said, fantastic, tell us what that looks like. And they said, well, we want to get them down so they can accomplish a task and be able to come back. And they said, okay, fine. What's the minimum time to accomplish a task? And they said, 10 minutes. We want to, how deep can they go and spend 10 minutes before they have to come back up? And the doctors in the scripts, they said, well, that'd be 140 feet. You can go down and you can stay down for 140 feet for 10 minutes. The Navy, by the way, in its infinite wisdom, had a brilliant moment for a second. And they said, wait a minute. Okay, we are dealing with 18-year-old kids who are 10 foot tall and bulletproof. We better pull this back a little bit, because if I told you you could only go to 140 feet, how deep would you go?
Maybe.
Admit it, you'd push it. You'd go to 141, wouldn't you?
They'd go at 160. They would.
Yeah, they figured that the average, if I told you to go to 100 feet, that meant I'd probably go to 145. It's okay. And if I told you could stay for 10 minutes, you'd stay for 11, right? It just is, right? Guys aren't the smartest things ever. You know, where we got all the muscle and the size, we got none of the brains, unfortunately. Women got all the brains and none of the size, right? So it worked out well for both of us. So what they said is, let's back that up. Let's keep that at 130 because we tell them 130 and they go to 140, they're still okay. We tell them 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes, and they go to 6 minutes, 7 minutes, they're still okay. So we backed everything up. And so now you can see very quickly that at 130 feet, the longest I can stay on air is 5 minutes. Now, good news for you guys is you guys are getting ready to take nitrox. And I want to point out that with nitrox, I don't know if you noticed this or not, we go over right here to 130 feet on 32% nitrox, which you're going to learn on Friday. Now, all of a sudden, y'all get 15 minutes. Does that sound like a pretty cool thing to be able to do? So you get 3 times the time at the same depth diving 130% nitrox, or 32% nitrox. So that's why we're taking nitrox, because I'm going to give you more bottom time and make your dives safer, less nitrogen. So overall, what this is it's exploring the amount of nitrogen that your body is absorbing. And that's what this is. This is the no decompression limit tables. Within these, all we're asking you to do is a safety stop. We're not giving you a decompression obligation. So, safety stops. Required, have to, strong suggestion like a yellow light. Required. You think?
Yeah, required.
Or like a yellow light. You are strongly, 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 strongly encouraged. It's kind of like looking both ways at the intersection of the yellow light. Look both ways, right? You should do it. Do we always do it? How many times where you see that yellow light and we hit the gas pedal, right? With diving, this is a little bit more important. So we're going to encourage you to do a safety stop, and I'm going to teach you a different kind of safety stop from the book. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there'll be about 20% of what I'll teach you that will not be in the book. So just be aware, and that's one of the nice things with the videos is you can go back and you can pick that information up. So as we figure this out, we can start figuring out what kind of dives we're going to do. Now, I'm certifying you to how deep?
60.
60 feet, right? So with 60 feet, right over here, I can go right. The maximum amount of time I can stay at 60 feet on air is 50 minutes. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If we kind of work this up, we'll say 57 feet. On 36% nitrox, I can stay for a lot longer. I can stay for 130 minutes, so better than double, right? So that's the advantage of nitrox. But for right now, we're just going to work on this side with just air and times. So if I'm doing a 40-foot dive, I've got 130 minutes. Makes pretty good sense so far? Pretty easy? Cool. Pretty straightforward. Read, move across. Now, you may wonder what those letters across the bottom might mean, right? By the way, thank you for asking. That was a very astute question on your part. I appreciate it. This is what's called your residual nitrogen group letter. And what that does is it's going to put you in a group to give you an idea of how much residual nitrogen you have before your next dive. Is there another? There is another chart. Thank you for asking. You guys are so smart. There happens to be 3 charts. There are 3 tables. They are very conveniently labeled table 1, table 2, table 3, right? It's not a lot of rocket science going on here. So I do know that if I come out of the water, let's go back up. I've been diving a 60-foot dive for 30 minutes. I'm going to be an F group diver. Does that make sense so far? If I've been diving for 50 feet for 70 minutes, I'm an I group diver. So over and down, like every chart you've ever seen since when did we start doing charts? About 2nd grade, 3rd grade? Just exactly like you think. If I've been diving for 35 feet for 100 minutes, I'm an H group diver. Okay, that's how we figure out our letter group. But what does that mean? Ruth, that was a great question. Thank you. So if I come out of the group as an H group diver, all I need to do is follow that straight down to H group diver. And if I want to become a higher level diver, all I need to do is follow it across. So if I stay out of the water for an hour and 7 minutes, between an hour and 7 minutes and an hour 41 minutes, that makes me an F group diver. If I'm an H group diver and I stay out for 4 hours and 50 minutes, but less than 7 hours and 59 minutes, I'm a B group diver.
And that means
Yes,
table 3.
We do go to table 3.
It's all in your
Absolutely. So now if I know that I'm going to stay out for a specific amount of time and I'm a E group diver, now I can figure out what my next dive can be up to. So we'll say I'm an D group diver. You'll notice that there's two colors here, it's white and green. White is my penalty. That'll be the amount of dive that I've already done prior to the dive, to my second dive, because that's the amount of residual nitrogen that I have to take into account. Okay, so I've got a penalty. White is penalty, green is go. Green is the amount of time. So if I come out as an F group diver, that means I can do a 60-foot dive for 14 minutes. It means that I've got a 36-minute penalty. Now, interestingly enough, oh,
Makes a lot more sense than just a promise.
Oh.
so here we have all the charts together. So 60 feet for 50 minutes, 60 feet, 50 minutes. Now, magically enough, does anybody notice a pattern here? 5 plus 45 equals 11 plus 39 equals 30 plus 20 equals? You're seeing a pattern, anybody? 44 plus 6 is 50, right? So these two numbers will always add up to whatever your first dive was, okay? They correspond. What this is telling you, this is your residual or your repetitive dive, your next dive, okay? This means on dive 1, where I don't have any residual nitrogen, I haven't been doing a dive at all, no dive at this point, I can do the full amount of time. So 50 feet for up to 70 minutes, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, 70 minutes. 50 feet for 70 minutes. I can come over to here, and now on my second dive, I've got an amount of residual nitrogen left. So as you can see, as I work off a lot of that residual nitrogen, the longer I stay out, the longer I can do my next dive for. So I started out as an F group diver. In the next dive, I've got 36-minute penalty. If I stayed out for a little longer, now all I have is a 24-minute penalty. If I stayed out for a lot longer, I only have an 11-minute penalty. And if I stay out for a lot longer, I have a 5-minute penalty. So this is always second dive, residual dive. Okay? This has got to go somewhere else. So let's talk about dive planning. So our dive plans are going to look like this. Okay, let's get through some definitions real quick. Our bottom time is measured from the beginning of the direct descent to the beginning of the direct ascent. Pretty straightforward. So as soon as we start ascending, that's the end of our bottom time, right? Residual nitrogen is the amount of nitrogen that's left over after our first, second, or third dive. We've started diving, we've started uptaking nitrogen into our bloodstream, right? And into our tissue, more accurately into our tissue. So that's our residual nitrogen. So we'll start with dive 1. Okay, so actual time, residual nitrogen, total time. With me so far? So dive 1, we're going to do a 60-foot dive, and we're going to do that for 40 minutes. How much, this is dive 1. How much residual nitrogen do we have? Exactly. How can we have residual? You can't have leftover pizza unless you order pizza, right? You can't have residual nitrogen unless you do a dive. No residual nitrogen on dive 1 because we haven't done anything yet. So our residual nitrogen becomes 0 because we haven't done anything yet. This is our first dive. There's nothing to be left over if we haven't done anything. Don't order pizza, you don't get pizza leftovers, right? Pretty straightforward. So our total time becomes 40 minutes. Yeah, not rocket science, right? So now let's go over to our chart. If we do a 40-foot or a 60-foot dive for 40 minutes, what is our letter group?
So lower right hit more.
As long as you say
Lower left
40
hit
minutes,
more.
60-foot dive for 40 minutes.
Ready. What were your numbers again? 60, 40?
60 feet, 40 minutes.
So
Okay.
So I'll just kick this back on for you guys. It might make this easier.
Yeah,
So dive 1 is 60 feet. Oh, this is table
Table
3.
three.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
he looks at it like, that's not the right number. Tells you how much he dives that he can look at that and know that it's wrong.
There we go. Here we go. So we talked about our initial dive was 60 feet for 40 minutes. 60 feet, 40 minutes. We're a letter group G. Okay. So now we're doing this dive together. We're going to kick along. We're going to get back on the boat. We're going to have a ham sandwich, Krispy Kreme donut, whatever you're into. Whatever makes you happy. Krispy Kreme makes me happy. Hopefully it makes you happy too. We're going to have some time out. And we're going to stay out for, how about 2 hours? Sound good? Let's pull this back down. So if we stay out, we're a G group diver. We're right here. And we stay out for 2 hours. What is our new letter group? D. Easy enough, right? Makes sense?
So then,
So now we stay out for 2 hours. Oh, this marker is saying goodbye to life. Two hours. That makes us a what letter, Edward? D. Okay. Now, here's the thing to remember. We always do our deepest dive first, and then we do shallower and shallower and shallower. We do a positive profile, not a negative profile. Okay? So our next dive, we're diving together. We're going to do a 50-foot dive. And let's do that 50-foot dive for 75 minutes. Can I do that dive is the first question.
well,
No.
No? Are you sure? Exactly. Ding, 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 ding. So we're a D group diver, right? And we're doing 50 feet. What's the maximum time we can do?
41.
41 minutes exact, right? We have how much residual nitrogen? Yep. So what was it, 41 and 29?
Yep.
So we had the maximum amount of time we can do on this dive is 41 minutes.
okay, can you walk me through that again? Okay, I see the D,
Mhm.
and then tell me how, like, what
So
the
D
29
is
and
go down to the 40.
yeah, I see that, but how did you just like I'm under D?
On-
So how
so
did you stop at 40
Go
right
to
here?
chart 3.
Yeah, I'm on chart.
Here we are at chart 3. You want to come over here? This might make it a little easier for you. So here's chart D, or chart 3. We're a D group diver.
Yeah.
We're going down to 50 feet right here.
Oh, because you just said I want to. Wait, how did you decide this one? What if I want to go and do this
You can. I'm just saying our next dive was going to be 50.
Pick whatever depth you want.
Yeah,
Oh, I
we
see.
we picked 50 feet for our next dive.
one? Okay.
We already did a 60-foot dive, so we're going to do a 50-foot dive the next one.
Okay.
So we planned our next dive is going to be a 50-foot dive,
Just shallow, more shallow.
and the longest we can stay down is 41 minutes, and it's going to give us 29 minutes of residual nitrogen.
Question is if we can do it.
We could do that.
It says that's a yes. How
Yes.
do I know if it's a no then?
Well, the first one I asked, we were a D group diver for 50 feet. Could we do a 75-minute dive?
Oh, and that one was, which one's a 75?
50 feet right here
Uh-huh.
as a D group diver.
Oh, no, and it's a no, because it doesn't say 75.
Exactly. So that's a big no. 41 feet is a big no, or is a big yes. So, now simple enough, to get our actual new total time for this dive, 41 plus 29 is? 70. 70. Easy enough. So our new total time for this new dive is 70 minutes. Easy enough. So, what does that make our new letter group? Go back to chart 1.
Okay.
70 minutes for 50 feet
So for 50
I.
feet.
makes us an I group diver.
Okay.
We're coming out of the water as an I group diver. What if I stay out of the water for 3 hours? I'm an I group diver. I stay out of the water for 3 hours. Become a D group diver. Okay. Last dive. We're doing only 3 dives today.
Okay.
Our depth is going to be 40 feet. What's the maximum amount of time I can stay at 40 feet as a D group diver? So just come over, find D. Come down to 40 feet.
So 30 minutes? Am I looking at it right?
Remember, white is penalty.
Oh, we're on the 3.
White is penalty. Green is go. So just come over to chart 3, D group diver. Bring it down to, what do we say, 30 feet? 40 feet, sorry. D group diver, 40 feet. What's the maximum amount of time I can stay down at?
3?
93 minutes.
Then what does the 37 mean? How long do you have to wait?
That's
How much
the
time have you
penalty.
lost?
That's like our,
That's the dive time you've lost because you've already been in the water. So, what was it, 93 minutes?
yeah.
93.
With how much residual nitrogen time?
37.
37 at 40 feet. Now, magically enough, if I'm going to 40 feet, I can go back over to chart 1. That's what it should add up to at 40 feet. If it's, I'm looking at just pure maxes. Does it add up?
What numbers are you adding? Like, why do you have to cross reference or cross check?
You're adding the time lost. So in this case, you're adding the 37 and the 93
Oh, okay.
to tell you how much nitrogen you have. So then you can go back to chart 1 and look at what a 40-meter dive is at that addition.
Exactly. By Job, I think he's got it. So we can go back over here and we know that a maximum dive, at 40 feet is 130 minutes. So if we did a 130-minute dive for our last dive, we know very quickly we're going to come out as a K group diver. Make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, let's go over a couple pieces of this as well. See. All right, I have not put that on mine. So just warning, the U.S. dive tables were designed to Navy specifications for use by the Navy divers. When used by recreational divers, the tables should be used conservatively. Even when used correctly, the proper safety procedures, decompression sickness still may occur. Everybody's a little different. Now, safety stop procedures. It's recommended that you make a 3 to 5 minute safety stop at 15 feet on all dives over 30 feet. Now, if you forget to do your safety stop, or you omitted decompression, should you exceed the no Doppler, no decompression limit. So if you go outside of this chart, You do a 70-foot dive for 45 minutes. Here's what you do. Time limits exceeded by less than 5 minutes on any dive, it is recommended that you ascend normally to 15 feet and stop for at least 10 minutes or longer if air supply allows. Should you exceed the no Doppler decompression time limits by more than 5 minutes, but no more than 10 minutes on any dive, it's recommended that you come to a stop of 15 feet for at least 20 minutes or longer if your air supply allows. Okay, so if you break this and you go into what we call decompression, less than 5 minutes, you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes at, or 10 minutes or longer at the safety stop. Less than 10 minutes, or more than 5 minutes, less than 10 minutes, you're going to spend 20 minutes at your safety stop, the long safety stop. So be aware. Through this. So repetitive dives. The definition of a repetitive dive is any dive started more than 10 minutes after your last dive. If it starts at 5 minutes after your last dive, what is it? Continuation of the same dive. Absolutely. So just be aware, repetitive dives are, the definition is any dive started more than 10 minutes and less than 12 hours after your last dive. So, no decompression limits. Everybody gets a little stressed out on this. Can you get a long dive out of a no decompression dive? My watch here on the right-hand side might say yes. 40 feet, 2 hours and 18 minutes. Let's take a look at it. 40 feet, 130 minutes on air, but I was running nitrox on this particular dive, so I get to go up here, 205 minutes. So over 3 hours. You can get long dives out. In fact, this is one of Nikki's favorite dives because we spent 2 hours and 18 minutes at 40 feet discovering a reef. We had plenty of time. Okay? Plenty of time. We're shallow, we explored, and had lots of time. You can certainly spend time down. Just be aware that you need to do it within the green and white here. Okay? If you're going to do a 70-foot dive, the longest dive you got is 40 minutes. If you're going to do a 35-foot dive, 160 minutes. So you get some advantages. Just be aware you could dive for quite a while. That was an actual dive and one of Nikki's favorite dives. Beautiful Hawaiian dive. But how about now? So we're talking about doing a dive profile. That looks like this. How many of my dives, and I've got a buttload of dives, that do you think that I went and hit the bottom directly, immediately, stayed at a perfect level for the entire dive, and then did a direct descent perfect square? I mean, you guys think my dives look like that? Absolutely zero. Not one, not ever. So what does an actual dive look like? Lucky for you, I just happen to have one. So on the bottom here, this is the depth profile for the 2 hour and 18 minute dive, which had an average depth of 28 feet. This is what it actually looked like. I went down, came up, went down, went up, down. You can see I kind of came up a little bit, came over the reef, came over the reef, went down over the reef, came up, checked the surface real quick, went back down. That was my navigation pop. I wanted to make sure we were in the right place, right? But as you can see, we were at 20 feet and had been at 20 feet for a while. This is what it actually looked like. Now, this is what your dive computer will help you do. It will take into account the times that you were not that deep. On our dive plan, we looked at it, it would call this dive a 40-foot dive, and it would limit out the time. But because this wasn't a true 40-foot dive, I spent a lot of time at 30 feet with an average depth of 28 feet down. It took into account all these ups and downs, and that's the beauty of having your own dive computer, is it will give you credit for the time you don't spend at the deepest point, whereas your dive plan will only count for the point of the deepest point. Now, interestingly enough, dive computers really came about in the 70s. There was two different groups coming together. The Navy was the primary one that got together and theorized the idea that we need a dive computer. They were too large and too bulky, and they were considered classified at that point. But the Navy came up with the idea that we need a dive computer because we need a better tactical advantage for our divers. So they were in the 70s. They were originally classified, and then eventually they came out for recreational divers as well. They were larger, and they've gotten smaller and smaller, and smaller and smaller. So they've gotten pretty neat. But that's what it does. Is it measures the amount of time at different depths to monitor and record the amount of residual nitrogen that you actually have. So should you have a dive computer? I strongly encourage it.
So can I ask you a question on
Yes,
this
sir.
one?
Hmm?
So if you're running Nitrox 32 on this, would you calculate it for a 28-foot dive?
If you're using the table, you calculate it to the deepest depth, always.
Well,
So-
wait, so in order to get your residual for it, so in this point you're running 20 feet
Mhm.
for the
For the majority of the dive, but in terms of figuring out so can you calculate the average speed you'll drive to Pocatello?
Yeah.
Based upon weather conditions, elk, and every other weird condition that happens.
generally, because I've drove it.
But even when they were stopped, like Sunday, they stopped traffic for 30 minutes at a time to move 100, 200 head of elk across. If you didn't know that it was happening at that time, you wouldn't be able to. You're never quite sure what you're going to see. And there's been more than once, like just a few weeks ago, I was driving, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon from Pocatello. There was a coyote literally from here to the road, off the side of the road. I couldn't believe it. So I pulled over and stopped and checked him out. That was pretty cool. There's been more than once where I've been going southbound towards Pocatello, and I've seen the elk, and I've got it pulled over and enjoyed looking at the elk, right? So based upon what you're going to see, you can't always make that exact calculation of saying, I'm going to do this exactly, this is going to be my exact average. You just don't know.
Well, no. I think what I'm trying to get at is, so 40 foot is your max depth for this, but if I'm going into my next dive for it, could I calculate my residual for the 28?
You can, but you're,
The note comes in on the bottom of the table. Use conservatively.
yes.
These are the way that the Navy made these tables is they put a guy down at 20 feet, put him down at 20 feet, and just hold him up. Kept doing that till he got sick. So these tables were designed by making people sick. So could you survive past these tables? Probably.
So overall, the idea is it gives you at least a conservative blueprint. Okay, I know typically I'm going to be, 40 feet for 2.5 hours. The good news is I wasn't 40 feet, so I got a little extra time. And that's where the computer comes in. In fact, interesting enough on this dive, I'm so used to diving around here at 50 minutes to an hour because usually we get cold. My brain automatically kicks into where's the exit at about 45 minutes. And so at about here, I was like, where's the exit? And then I looked at it and checked my gas, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I still have another 2 hours of gas available. In fact, we came up with considerable amount of gas at the end of this dive. In fact, I want to say we still had over $1,000 in each tank. We were diving 2 tanks on this particular dive. So we came up with $1,000 in each tank. We could have stayed down for another 30 minutes easily on this, but we didn't. But my brain kicked into that point. And so for overall dive planning, it gives you a guide of say, okay, dive 1 is going to be 50 feet for 50 minutes. If you come up a little bit to 45 feet, you're going to gain time. In fact, that's one of the cool things. If you're getting close to deco point, come up 10 feet. 10 feet will usually give you about 5 to 8 minutes of additional time above deco. So if you start getting close to it, like, oh, okay, just ascend. Simple enough. In fact, one of my favorite things to do in solo diving class is I like to get my students at 60 feet and get them within about 1 minute of deco and then overtask them with a whole bunch of weird tasks. You're out of air on this one. You've got a snag on that one. You've got and I'll give them 3 tasks, knowing that I've just told them to check your deco time. What's your check your deco. That's the symbol for deco, and to see what they do. They usually freak out and have a kind of a mental meltdown because all of a sudden they have 3 tasks to do and they're 1 minute for deco, and you can't accomplish the task that I ask in less than a minute. But here's the simple solution. If they just rise in the water column 10 feet, all of a sudden they get 8 minutes, and 8 minutes is plenty of time to do the 3 tasks that I asked them. Rise in the water column, easy enough. But that's what it basically looks like. We're going to do this again here in a little bit, but I want to give you some other ideas. So the safety stop. The safety stop, while not mandatory, is strongly encouraged. And the same symbol for this is 3-minute safety stop, 4-minute safety stop, 5-minute safety stop. Okay? Simple enough. That's what this means. He's telling us that he's got a 4-minute safety stop. Now, in the book, it's going to tell you 20 feet for 3 minutes, 15 feet for 3 minutes, 15 feet to 3 to 5 minutes. Let's talk about why. So there's a concept, and it was come up by Haldane, that who was a scientist in the 50s, called M value. And M value is the maximum amount of nitrogen that a cell tissue can absorb before you get sick. The M value stands for maximum value. Now, what it's telling you here is less risk, more deco. If you spend more time at your safety stop, you move down into the safety zone. Less time at deco, it creates more risk and less silent bubbles and less symptomatic bubbles. And what it's really trying to tell you is that there's no hard line. Your hard line for a maximization of M value is different than my value. Is different than yours, different than yours, and different than yours. We all are individuals and unique. How I process fat, for example, off of my famous Krispy Kreme donut, and I gain a pound just for eating one or looking at one, is very different than yours. You probably could eat a whole dozen and lose a pound with your little metabolism. Mine, I eat one and I gain 2 pounds, right? It's just how it is. Our metabolisms are different. What this is telling you is there's a gray zone for M value and how much your cells can absorb nitrogen. Do more safety stop, take more time, relax, make sure you stay within safety. And this is what the charts and the safety stop will do, is it'll give you more deco and decrease your risk. Anybody want less risk during diving? Sound good? Should sound good. So, the simple takeaways from this last chart. Dive tables and safety stops are how divers manage the size of the bubbles in their bloodstream. You're going to get bubbles regardless. But more safety stop means smaller bubbles. It's like we took a Coke bottle and we shook the crap out of it, right? If we just crack the top, that means no safety stop. Crap goes everywhere, right? If we shake that same bubble with the bubbles in it, we just let it off really gently. We don't get crap on us, right? Same thing with the bubbles in our bloodstream. As we come up slowly, and we do that safety stop, we're managing the size of the bubbles. We're letting the gas off very slowly. So that's what we're doing. We're teaching you bubble management. Safety stops assist in the reduction of the size of those bubbles. Number 3, there's no clear line between good and bad. At least where we're at, right? And number 4, every diver is different in the way their body manages bubbles and the size and reduction of them. In result, do a safety stop. It's to your advantage. By the way, that's side mount diving, in case you were wondering. Now, yeah, I was carrying alongside.
Jeez.
I like to mess with dive masters that don't know what side mount is too, because I'll put all my gear on and I'll have my tanks over there like, where's your tank? There's no straps to your thing. I like to just hold it and hug my tank and just dive out. They're like, really? No, I'm free diving this, or I'll give them all kinds of hard time. It's my personal fun. So this is a tale of 3 divers. Diver 1 is Blue. He came up from 120 feet on a nitrox dive, and this is what his residual nitrogen bubble count in parts per million, bubbles per 1,000 looks like. And interestingly enough, what you'll find is most nitrogen presents at about the 15-minute mark. So he came up from 130 feet without doing a direct ascent without a safety stop. At about the 16-minute mark, he was pretty close to 120,000 bubbles per liter. Okay, it's a lot of freaking bubbles. Bad. And as you can see, over the course of time, they leveled off to, even at 120 minutes, he still had about 19,000 bubbles per liter. Okay. Diver number 2 was a little smarter. He stopped for 2 minutes at 3 meters, about 10 feet. As you can see, he still had a spike, but he still was below 20,000. And slowly but surely, to the point at 2 hours, he still had about 5,000 bubbles per liter. Okay? Diver number 3 is what I would like you guys to consider being. Diver number 3, from 130 feet, came up to 1 minute at 6 meters, at about 20 feet. And then he came up to 10 feet for 4 minutes. He did a 5-minute safety stop, but he did it a little differently. Stopped at 20 feet for 1 minute, stopped at 10 feet for 4 minutes. Look at his residual nitrogen count. Very low, very low, very low. And about the 42-minute mark, he was goose eggs on the residual nitrogen. No bubbles in his bubble stream. So, which diver do you want to be? Typically, most divers are the red ones. With a little bit of change in your thought process, you can absolutely be the yellow diver. And the cool thing is how much more safe is diver yellow versus diver red? Substantially. Be diver 3. 1 minute at 20 feet, 4 minutes at 10 feet. I promise you, you won't miss the extra 2 minutes you spend at your safety stop. And it's kind of fun to stay at the 10-foot mark and watch the jacks come through or the angelfish come through. So it's pretty enjoyable. Besides, you're in the water, in the ocean, blowing bubbles. Would you rather be back? What do you do for a living? Which sounds more fun? 2 extra minutes watching the jacks float underneath you or security management? Absolutely. Right? That's my same thing. I'm a consultant. I would much rather do this than anything else in the world. So, do a safety stop. Takeaways. A safety stop reduces bubbles. A longer safety stop reduces more bubbles than a shorter one. A 5-minute safety stop during a repetitive dive increases the safety margins. Takeaway, do your freaking safety stop. Try it a little differently. How about flying after diving? Yes, sir.
Do you do the safety stop like in your navigation pop
You can.
on your other one? Okay. Should you or?
I didn't in that because I had been at the 20-foot mark for so long and it was such a shallow dive, I was not worried in the least.
Okay.
I could have figured anything out. I could have stayed at the surface. I could have, but I'd blown off all the nitrogen for so long because I'd already been probably 15 minutes at 20 feet. So I had already, my counter on my safety stop was at about 10 or 15 minutes on safety stop. So I was good. Absolutely. Yes.
So is this like when we were practicing like blowing into the regulator? Is that what, when you're saying do bubbles, like is that what we're doing when we're?
No, I'm just saying anytime you're underwater and you breathe out, there's going to be bubbles.
Okay.
So we talk about it as just being bubble time.
Okay, so we're
That's
just doing
that's
the
just a
same.
clear.
Okay, so there's not something specifically that we're doing when we're doing the safety.
You're breathing. The
We're
number
just
one rule of diving is always breathe.
Okay.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Don't and continue until you're done.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was like something extra we had to add in there.
Nope, nothing extra.
Got it.
I just call it blowing bubbles, and that's my de-stressor. I'll tell Nikki I'm stressed out. Let's go blow some bubbles. So we go for a dive. So flying after diving. How long should you wait? 12 hours for a new dive day. 24 hours for a flight. Most dive computers will have a dive count on them. You are pressurizing to 10,000 feet. So you want to make sure you blow off all that residual nitrogen. You can get the bends in a flight. Absolutely. Right? We talked, did we talk last week about the bends and dive maladies? Okay, good. Watch the videos.
I watched the first one.
There's 2 more to go.
2 more.
So you can get the bends while flying. It's not a thing you want to get. So wait 24 hours before you fly. Now, as you're getting ready to, let's go back. As you're getting ready to dive, here's a couple of suggestions for you. The last thing you want to do is, and I've done this, so I promise you it's not a good idea, is fly in to whatever airport at 7 o'clock in the morning. I haven't done this one. At 7 o'clock in the morning and have a dive boat at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Don't be tired when you dive. Be well rested. Be well hydrated. Be ready for the dive, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Be ready for that dive. We had a dive one time where we had a boat going out at 7 a.m. We ended up getting delayed and getting into the airport at midnight. Our bags came in on the next flight. We still had to go over and get tanks that night and then go back to the airport at 2 a.m. to get our gear because our gear was on coming in. And then we got to the hotel at 3 a.m. Got, 2 hours of sleep, sweetheart? 2, 3, yeah, something like that. We got about 2-3 hours of sleep, and then we went out to the dive boat. They weren't we were doing a pretty big dive that morning, and so they weren't as enjoyable as they could have been. We were just wore out. Don't do that. Take some time. Don't just fly in and then jump on a boat. Take some time, get relaxed, get rested, get your mind right, get your body right, get your emotions right. And the same thing, I leave the last day for seeing the sights around. Wherever you're traveling to for diving is going to have something interesting and neat to see. I don't care where you're at. There's always something interesting and neat. Save that last dive for your day for your tours. Plus, it's nice to let your dive gear dry out. So I will hang it in the window or on the veranda or the deck or the balcony. And we'll let them dry out and get because it weighs less as well when it's dry. So take your time. So, question time. Diving at altitude or flying after diving? Who's got my answer? This might be a test question, by the way. He is exactly right. Wait 24 hours. So, proper procedures for shore diving. One of the things you can do on shore diving, and I love shore diving, absolutely love it. It's a great way to save some money, but see stuff and do dives at your own pace and your own time and your own everything, right? For example, we were in Hawaii a month before last, and we did the first Saturday and Sunday, we did all boat dives. Then Monday through Friday, we did all shore dives. The boat dives, for 6 boat dives, cost us $1,800 with tanks. For the shore dives, they were costing us $60. So it was $15 per nitrox tank, sorry, not nitrogen, nitrox tank. And that came with lead. So to rent 2 tanks, each tank was costing me $15, and it came with the weight. I didn't have to travel with weight. I never traveled with lead.
That's what lead is.
Yeah, I never traveled with weight, and I never traveled with my own tanks. So they were charging us $15 per tank, and Nikki and I were going out, and it was great. We'd plan ourselves accordingly. We'd go out to the dive site. We'd get geared up as we felt like it. We talked to some people, look around, talk to some people.
So it costs more because they're having to use their boat. They're having to pay the dives, the fuel for the boat.
Exactly. And boat dives are great. I love boat dives. We do a lot of boat dives, absolutely. You get out to some sites that you probably wouldn't be able to get to otherwise. But when we were in Kona, there's plenty of diving along the shore. We saw some amazing dives. Now, there's a couple keys to that. Research is the first one. Understanding the dive site where you're going, talking to the locals, understanding what the entry and exit procedures are going to look like there. Okay. The next piece of that is going to understanding the tide. You're going to want to generally enter most dive sites from the shore at high tide. It's going to be much more difficult at low tide. This is a screenshot from an app that you can get for free, by the way. It's a tide chart that you can get. And it'll give you the exact time of high tide and low tide. This one's pretty slick. It'll also give you the sunrise time. And as you can see in this particular case, sunrise and sunset are fairly important on this. But I also have a sunrise, sunset app as well that I really, really like. It happens to be pretty fantastic. So understanding that, get the app, plan your dives accordingly. Can you get into the park? There was one of the dives we wanted to do that the park didn't open up till 7 a.m. High tide was at 6:30. So we had to go in just after high tide had come in, but that's okay. We figured out it was the higher of the two high tides as well. So just be aware of that. But what does that look like? Once you get to the dive site, what does the dive site look like? How do I navigate in? How do I navigate out? Talk to the locals, talk to the dive shops. There's a lot of information out there, and there's probably even a YouTube video on it, to be honest with you. But take the time. Second thing is going to be check the waves before you go out. What are the waves doing? We decided I want to say it was a Thursday. We were going to do the north end of the island. Waves were about 7 to 8 foot. Definitely that is a no bueno. If you can surf the waves, it's probably not a good place to do a shore entry. You're going to have some major problems and not going to be to your advantage. So make sure the waves. So check the waves. Talk to the locals. Look at the weather report. If you get out to the site, in this particular case, we got out to the site, we looked at it. We saw the 7-foot waves. We're like, nope. And we went to the southern end. We drove another hour south to a cove where we get into very easily. Be aware. Surf entry. How am I going to get in? How am I going to get out? Typically, if you're doing a sandy entry, what you want to do is you want to walk into your at least waist deep, and then you want to go with your buddy, and generally you want to link arms. And then what I do is you turn and back in to get to about chest deep, and then you put your fins on. And then you duck walk backwards until the point where you're about shoulder deep, regulators in your mouth the whole time, and go ahead and dive under. All you need to do is get about 2-3 foot under most smaller waves, and you're going to be golden, right? Same thing for coming out. We're going to swim to the shallowest point where I can stand and I can breathe normally. I'm going to back myself up to the surf so the surf is hitting my back and I can stand back to it. I'm going to take my fins off, and I like to have a clip in my pocket somewhere. I clip my fins, and then I walk out. I get those fins off. But arm in arm. Make sure you're safe. And dealing with surf is pretty straightforward. Make sure that you don't enter a surf that's too tall, too high. It's definitely not to your advantage. Proper procedures for boat diving. Avoiding seasickness. Seasickness is a real and meaningful thing, and I promise you that it can happen to you no matter how strong you think your sea legs are. First time it happened to me, I was on a second dive with my daughter in Florida, and I didn't realize it, but I lost a weight pocket. That morning, by the way, I'd also had the big Mondo burrito from Alberto's. This thing was like this big and like this. Oh, it was giant. It was wonderful. It was a chorizo and eggs. It was awesome. I love chorizo. Oh yeah, it was a great burrito. Absolutely. But I lost a weight pocket. Got down. We were about 70 feet on a dive, and I couldn't stay down. And so
Not even with the burrito, huh?
not even with a burrito. I'd lost a whole weight pocket. So what I did is I found a big rock, and I found this rock, and one rock like that is about equal to about 3 or 4 pounds underwater, right? And so I'm swimming around, and my daughter kept looking at me like, "What the hell's up the rock?" And I'm like, "Just you do you, I'll do me." Finally, it was just no fun swimming around with a stupid rock. So I made the mistake as I let the rock go to go up and do my safety stop. Well, the problem is tanks become lighter as they become empty, so they become buoyant. Those 80 cubic foot aluminum start at about 2.5, 3 pounds negative, and they end about 1.5 pounds positive. I got to 15 feet and I could not stay down, so I had to head down, feet straight in the air, kick my butt off like I was Michael Phelps for 3 straight minutes. My daughter kept looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing?" And finally, I gave up at the end of my 3-minute safety stop, and I popped like a Triton missile to the top. She came up more slowly. I felt sick, so I undid my my cummerbund, loosened my straps up a little bit, and she came up. She says, "Why haven't you launched your safety buoy?" And I'm like, "Ugh," and I fed the fish right there. It was bad. So, and then my other favorite times that I've seen this, there's a particular boat that we like to get on. We get on what's called a Little Deeper out of Stewart Scuba in Florida. It's a very flat bottom boat. It tends to do a lot of this. My favorite is to get on with the guys from Minnesota. The Minnesota divers. I'm a technical dry suit diver in Minnesota. Half hour later, they're shooting for distance and time and velocity, right? It happens almost every time. I see it on these flat bottom boats. So how do you avoid that? Simplest way is the night before, Dramamine. Take a couple Dramamine just before you go to bed. Take 2 more in the morning when you get up, and 1 more as you get on the boat. You will be freaking Popeye the Sailor person, and nothing will ever, a typhoon could come through and you will not get
Is
sick.
that a standard you do now?
I do, yeah. It's very rare that I get sick, or feel sick, but a lot of times I'll prevent it with just taking a couple of Dramamine the night before. Sometimes I forget, but every once in a while, and I've never had a problem. C-bands work.
Usually end up by
And then C-bands work really well as well. They're about $10. There's one goes on each wrist. They work really well. Whilst you're on the boat, an easy thing to do is make sure you watch the horizon. If you can't see the horizon, if you're starting to feel seasick, don't go in the head. It's dark, it's smelly down there anyway. You won't be able to see things, and your brain is not able to anticipate what's going on. If you watch the horizon, your brain's able to equalize and get an idea of what's coming up and what to expect. Simple enough. And then, of course, avoid Filibertos or Alibertos.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a big burrito. So those are your tips. The night before, 2 Dramamines. The morning of, 2 Dramamine, and 1 before you get on the boat. There is nothing. I mean, you can eat the giant burrito and you'll be rocking, socking. So executing the dive, we want to make sure that we're entering the water. We've got the proper amount of weights. We control our descent. The last thing you guys want to be is a boat anchor, right? Crashing the bottom is not a good thing. There are things down there that will bite you, sting you, cut you, nick you, rub you in all kinds of ways you don't want to. That's what happens to you. The problem is if you If you land on top of the coral, you're going to kill the coral. So remember, our goal is to be environmentally conscious, that we have proper buoyancy control. We control our ascents, control our descents as well. Navigation. A compass is not a bad thing. When should you take your first compass reading, though?
Yeah.
Before you get in the water. Yeah, that's kind of a brilliant thing. I promise you, get down there. On that dive on Sunday where I was, it was 60 feet of crap viz and it opened up at the bottom. If I didn't know which way was north, which way was south, and which way was how to get out of the water, it would have been very easy to get turned around. There's no visual reference with the sun or anything else, and you can easily get turned around. Doesn't take much. If you don't believe me, get a good blindfold one day, have your kids spin you around 15 times, walk around a room, spin you around 2 more times, and see if you can figure out which way is north. It's tough. So take a good navigation. Figure out which way is north, which way is south. I always like to figure out which way land is. That's always my first one. And the second one is, which way are we diving? Which way is the current? Are we going northeast to southwest? What are we doing? What does that look like? I can take my compass and read that. We want to make sure we're practicing good performing the ascent. We want to make sure we're taking time to do a good ascent. And the easiest way to do that is go up. Good. Let a little air out and then start your ascent. Remember we talked earlier in class 1 about Boyle's law, as pressure increases, volume decreases? Well, the inverse of that is correct as well. So as pressure decreases, volume increases. So if we're 33 feet and we have 1 cubic foot of air in our BC, how many cubic feet of air do we have at the surface? 2. That's exactly right. Good job. So 2 cubic feet of air at the surface. Is 2 cubic feet of air more buoyant than 1 cubic foot of air? Substantially. Fun story for you. About 4 years ago, I decided to prove Boyle's law for my students. I took a 1 cubic foot Mylar balloon, filled it up, and tried to get it down. I added 15 pounds of extra lead. I couldn't get it down. 1 cubic foot was keeping an extra 15 pounds of lead at the surface. It doesn't take much. Okay. To give you an idea, this is a 7-liter BC. The one I have for my twin sets, that 75 pounds of twin sets that I carry, it's at 11 liters. 11 liters is enough to buoyant all 75 pounds of my twin set tanks. 11 liters. So basically, what? 5 Coke bottles? Not a lot. Doesn't take much. Make sure you understand how we're exiting the water and where we're getting out at and what our emergency plan is. All these things need to happen to execute your dive correctly. Okay. Everybody but Rose has read the whole book, and you've gotten to the point where it talks about SAC rate, surface air consumption rate, or how to calculate the amount of gas. Was it confusing? Going through that formula?
A little.
A little? Kayla, was it a little on the confusing side? Please have it done. So it's very confusing. They make it as hard as humanly possible. Would anybody like a simpler way to figure out what your surface air consumption rate is?
Yeah, is there an app?
Well, there's not for everything.
There is. Good news is there is an app, but I've got an even simpler way. Because honestly, does the app know the size of your lungs?
But I'm sure we could. Probably could.
It doesn't. And so we got a lot of different. So let's figure out an easier way to do this. So the simple way to determine the actual SAC rate. So my surface air consumption rate determines the amount of gas I use where?
Okay.
On the surface. It's in the name, right? Surface air consumption rate. It's kind of like asking, what was Custer's gray horses? What color was Custer's gray horse, right? It's in the name. Surface air, right? It's nice and simple. So surface air. So it doesn't matter what size of tank we start with. Okay? Tank of any volume. What I want you to do is you start out with sitting in a normal position at home. Not in the water, nowhere else, because remember, this is at the surface. Give me some 5s. You know you want to. Yeah. There we go. Measure the amount of PSI prior to starting, because I need to know my starting point. If I'm going to figure out my gas mileage in my car, I need to know how much gas I started with, right? Same thing with this. If I start out with 3,000 PSI, perfect. Put the regulator in your mouth and put your mask on your face, take a picture of it and put it on the Facebook page because it's a little funny. I've had my students do it before. my favorite is to watch Big Bang, and David will tell you I talk a lot. Big Bang is one of my favorite shows. So it's about 20 minutes. So breathe out of your regulator for 20 minutes. Measure the PSI volume at the end of the process. Divide by the total number of minutes and repeat this 3 times for an average. That is your surface air consumption rate. Does that seem a little easier than what was in the book? Now, here's the thing. If I want to get good math and good statistics, what do I have to get that information?
Data points.
Good data. That's exactly right, right? Crap in, crap out, right? If I'm on a dive, how many dives do you think I've done that are exactly the same? About half past zero? Absolutely. So how can I possibly come up with an accurate SAC rate if I can't have good, accurate data starting at the beginning of the SAC rate? If I'm not measuring the same thing over and over again, I can measure a 2x4. It's going to be the same every time, right? 1 3/4 inches thick, 8 feet long, 3 3/4 or 3.5 inches wide. It's always going to be the same. But what happened if I had a group of 4th graders making me 2x4s, right? They're going to be different every single time. How can I measure or build a house with that? I can't. So you start with your surface air consumption rate, how much air my actual lungs will hold. Here's where it gets easy. You get that number. To determine your SAC rate, I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to use the board. And we will come back to this. So, if I know that I started with 3,000 PSI, I breathed over 1,000 PSI doing that, so I ended with 2,000 PSI. That means I breathed 1,000 PSI over the course of 20 minutes. 1,000 PSI divided by 20 minutes is what? 50 PSI a minute, right? Sound about right? Simple enough. That's my SAC rate per minute. Now, you may wonder, how does that affect at depth? Remember we talked about Boyle's law, as pressure increases, volume decreases, right? Same thing with SAC rate. So now all I need to know is I breathe 50 PSI per minute. That's a very high SAC rate, by the way. What if I'm going to do a dive to 33 feet? That's 2 atmospheres, right? 2 ATA, which is 33 feet, times 50 PSI per minute equals 100 PSI per minute. Pretty simple. What if I'm going to go to 66 feet? Glad you asked. 3 ATA times my 50 PSI a minute, 150 PSI per minute. It works to any depth. 99 feet, that's 4 ATA times 50, 200 PSI per minute. Make sense? Pretty simple. A little simpler than the math you made. Now here's the good news is this number doesn't change. This is your actual SAC rate. You're able to come up with a much more accurate number. But if I'm walking through the grocery store, pushing a cart at Walmart, is my SAC rate or how much air I go through different than when I go over the track at Idaho Falls High School and run around?
Yeah, no. I would say yes.
Yes, this is exactly right. Oh, good job. So I need to make one more slight calculation. I need to account for effort. And that's really super simple. So we know my PSI, my SAC rate is 50 PSI per minute. That doesn't change. My lungs are 2.1 liters. I go through 50 PSI per minute. That's it, right? No big deal. I know that at 4 atmospheres, 99 feet, all I do is multiply. So now I'm 200 PSI per minute with no effort. If I'm just going to go down and just going to sit there and do nothing, 200 PSI a minute. If I'm on a light drift dive in the Caribbean where it's warm, that's going to be about a 1.5 time effort. That's all there is to it. 4 ATA, 200 PSI a minute. Now all of a sudden we have a 300 PSI per minute based upon effort. pretty simple.
How many calories did I actually burn?
If you get the right watch, it'll calculate it for you.
That's what I
The good
really
news is
wanted to
and diving does burn calories.
Okay.
So 1.5 time sac rate for an easy dive. A cold water dive like I did on Sunday in a dry suit with heavy ass tanks, I was probably 3.5. 3.5 to 4. So we'll just say 4 for easy numbers. So I was at a 4 time effort. This is my effort. That's a 4, not a 9. So literally 4 times that, it means I was probably going through about 800 PSI per minute if that was my sac rate. So the harder I work, the bigger the effort number needs to be. Pretty easy. Make sense? Yeah, there's a crazy high sac rate. Absolutely. So
Oh my gosh.
pretty straightforward. What I'd like to do is give you guys about 9 minutes of break. So we'll reconvene at 8 o'clock if that's okay with you guys. And we'll do a little bit more and then we're going to get wet.